Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this session on opportunities for startups post-COVID. Promised to be an entertaining and interesting session. A lot of insights coming from three experts. Let me introduce the three experts to you on the panel. Let's start with Chaya Sehgal. She comes in with a background of being an entrepreneur herself. Now she runs an outfit called The Winning Edge, which is responsible for mentoring a lot of businesses, SMEs, startups, all put together. Chaya brings in a rich experience from the corporate space as well, having started her career after her management degree from the prestigious Jamnalal Bajaj Institute, way back almost 3 decades back, more than 3 decades back, I would say. Starting off with Hindustan Petroleum, then has consulted various companies like Quotient Travels, BARC, Siemens India, ONGC, etc. Last year, she was the elected president of Bombay Management Association and had introduced many futuristic and innovative initiatives to enhance industry academia collaboration. So that's Chaya Sehgal for you. Next on the panel is Professor Ashwin Mahalingam from IIT Madras. He's the professor of civil engineering in IIT Madras. Holds a PhD in civil engineering from nothing less than the Stanford University, California. He has got rich experience having worked in Intel, Globe Ranger, etc. Has experience across the globe, having worked in Germany, and then coming back to his roots at IIT Madras from 2007. And he's been an entrepreneur himself and currently nurturing the ecosystem at IIT Madras, the startup ecosystem. He's going to share many of his experiences from that space. And then we have Mr. Uday Vankawala, who is currently the CEO of AIC RMP, where he's brought in a lot of new initiatives, increased the outreach through his network. Prior to that, he's been a consultant in the startup ecosystem for the last 15 years that I've been knowing him. Extremely active with Sign of IIT Bombay, has worked at various incubators, helped NMIMS with their curriculum design for their School of Design. He comes in with a master's in management from Mumbai University. So we have an exciting panel today to talk about opportunities post-COVID. So let's get on. My first question to the panelists is, how easy is it going to be for an entrepreneur in the current times with a lot of challenges around? So it's often said that challenges are opportunities. So that's my first question. So what are the challenges and what are the opportunities coming out of the challenging situation right now? Anybody would like to take that? Anybody?
Shall I, Kaustubh?
Sure. Go ahead, please.
Okay. So I actually felt that that question itself had a lot of paradox. Okay. The entrepreneurs are entrepreneurs because they probably don't really relish what is easy. They are into the entrepreneurial domain because they want challenges. And unless they have had some challenges, I don't think they have accomplished anything and they have come up with anything worthwhile. So challenges are, I think, a very important ingredient of an entrepreneurial journey, because that is what is the motivator. But yes, this COVID challenge, this is something for which nobody could plan. This is something which nobody could, visualize, and therefore people are absolutely unprepared, and therefore yes, it's a crisis. It's a crisis. It's a challenge of a very different order, and yes, therefore everything is topsy-turvy. Even in all these webinars, whether I'm addressing them or I'm attending them, I see that whenever COVID word is attached, the registrations, they go up like anything. Without that, we all feel that yes, this same knowledge, the same gyan is always available on YouTube. Even now it is available. So yes, this is playing a lot on our minds, and therefore let us view this specific challenge right now. And if you're looking at the money part of it, which is another part of your question, then yes, in March and April itself, the Indian startups have lost, almost 80% of the investments that they have been having until then earlier. But it's not as if the startups have not got money, because there is a lot of money. People don't know where to invest it because stock market is falling. There is no safety of money anywhere. They have the money, but they just don't know where to invest because they are being extremely, extremely cautious. And therefore, I would say that startups will get money even now, provided they can sustain the cash longer. They have higher contribution margins than others, and how their cash is flowing, whether they have achieved the unit economics or not, how much amount of cash they already have, at what pace it is being burnt, is what investors are going to watch before they come up with any more money for them. Besides, the money is likely to get into the technology sector now because of everything being remote and everything is being in E-mode. So the automation, remote control, monitoring of solutions, and the ancillary business which are in the value chain of such businesses are going to be preferred for funding. So you'll have the startups which are building solutions using IoT, artificial intelligence, machine learning, deep learning. These are the ones which will attract investments. And of course, there is this business model called Assured, which Dr. Mashelkar has talked about in his book, Leapfrogging to Pole Vaulting, which received the prestigious 2019 Tata Literature Live Business Book of the Year award. So the Assured the acronym stands for affordability, sustainability, scalability, universality, and R stands for rapid, E stands for excellence, and D stands for distinguished. Of course, it's a tall order, but then we do have an example of our own Parle-G, which has been everything of this, and therefore in 80 years it has made highest sales during Corona pandemic. So these are some of the things that I would like to share. And then there are certain startups which have received very good funding, which are either in delivery mode like Shiprocket, or which are in the wellness mode like Sarva, the yoga and wellness startup. There is another startup in Pune, which is for the health and wellness. So these are the Slice, another startup in South, which gives young Indians, the ability to spend money without having a credit card, and help builds credit score for them also, because people don't know, banks are not giving money. This is the kind of startups which are now going to have more and more money. Thank you, Kaustubh.
Right. Okay. So you talked about tech and healthcare, wellness, etc. Dr. Ashwin, any other sectors that startups under you at IIT Madras are kind of discovering?
Sure. First of all, thank you, Kaustubh, for the very kind introduction, and thank you all for having me on this panel. I think, I also completely agree with what Chaya ma'am just sort of said. I think one of the things in terms of opportunities for startups is that business as usual, as we know it, is obviously going to change. And in some sense, that should be good news for an entrepreneur, because fundamentally an entrepreneur is trying to disrupt business as usual and trying to do something that is outside the the status quo. So in some sense, you could think of it as an opportunity, saying, look, there is a somebody, there's an external force that is disrupted. Now it's up to you to start playing. I think almost every sector has opportunity, right? So I'll give you an example. I come from a civil engineering background, so that's sort of one of my hats. I'm a professor of civil engineering. And generally people think of civil engineering as very traditional, how is it really affected by COVID? But we're learning that even in the last few months, we've seen a number of opportunities for entrepreneurs in this space. One, as we all know, there's been huge amount of labor migration, and industries like construction and manufacturing are going to be affected by this. We don't know when that labor will come back, all of those kinds of things, which means there is now going to be a greater push towards automation and mechanization of these kinds of processes. Of course, manufacturing has automated quite a bit, construction not so much, but there is a lot of opportunity for startups in that space. People who can, for instance, fly drones and give you better insights on construction projects, who can build devices, robots that can do the work that a worker could, all of those kinds of things. So there are opportunities, I believe, in all space. In fact, at IIT Madras, one of our startups that is doing quite well is one called Modulus Housing, which had an interesting story. They started some years ago saying, after one of our, I think it was after the floods that we had in Chennai a few years ago, wouldn't it be nice if we could build these foldable houses so that if there is a flood and people are displaced, I can quickly bring a foldable house, unfold it, put it there, so that person has shelter for the next few days until we find a permanent solution. Turned out that market was not really a very lucrative market. But today, COVID, a lot of people are saying, I'd like modular, hospitals, I like modular treatment units, modular this, modular that. So again, even in a dull and dreary field like civil engineering, there are opportunities, and therefore there will be opportunities, I think, in any field, provided you sort of sit and think and see what are the challenges that industry is facing. Because every industry is affected, right? I can't think of an industry that is not affected by COVID. So that is sort of my take on the opportunities part, Kaustav.
Yeah. So, Uday, under your stewardship, what's coming out from the western region, western part of the country?
So interesting. I mean, the question around definitely it's a kind of a crisis sort of a situation when it comes down to the current scenario in business. But one of the things I believe that a lot of entrepreneurs or founders have really worked upon is adaptability, in a way that they've adapted the situation, and then also about adapting their particular model in different sectors or industries. They might not have thought about it pre-COVID. They are now applying their solutions to other industries and other particular sectors, which is very interesting sort of a move, which I believe that shows the real character of a founder and a startup, that how they are able to adapt and cope with the current challenging times. So a couple of our startups, I think Vasundhara Geo, they are working with municipal corporation. They are into satellite imaging, and then this is the kind of a thing that they can apply anywhere, their particular expertise, right? Similarly, Omnicurus, which is into online modules for doctors. I mean, again, they came up that how about looking at coming up with modules and AI application of artificial intelligence in their modules, and then doing it at maybe districts, smaller districts, wherein not doctors are too aware about this particular aspect of it, which is continuous medical education. So again, I mean, it is a tough time, but again, as a startup ecosystem, we have to really look at, and that's the reason we said that let's keep this as opportunities rather than saying this as, hey, this is a difficult time, which everyone knows it. But very important is how they are able to adapt. And what Chaya ma'am said, I completely agree. This is like what we used to talk about, fourth industrial revolution, right? Talking about machine learning and IoT and all those things. I believe with the lesser human intervention, if at all people could come up with solutions around that, even fintech space, I think has got a lot of space now wherein they can work upon, and agriculture. Again, I mean, these are, so one of the things, what we used to call it earlier about grassroots innovation, what we used to call it about certain solutions that the startups might not have thought as an industry or segment to cater to. I believe that now people have to wear that thinking cap and then try applying those things. And the last thing which I believe, and that is very interesting, I would love to share with everyone, is we used to get a lot of solutions around apps, mobile apps earlier. Abhi kya ho raha hai? We are not getting that. I mean, this is the time to come up with app and some sort of a solution. I don't know where all those founders have gone in. So that's a question to the ecosystem that I have, that a lot of them had it app-based solutions a couple of years last year. And then now we are not able to kind of see them, cite them. I think what's the reason? I think that's where we really need to deep dive into the thing, and then maybe share common thoughts around that.
And even, say, education technology, edtech. People, I feel that's my view, that people are looking on the kind of run-of-the-mill applications like school education and university education, but there are a whole bunch of things which have been not catered to. Like 2 months back, sometime in the first week of April, 2.5 months back, I was reading that there is a shortage of 6 million nurses across the world for the pandemic to be handled properly. And nursing is not a profession which can be taught online through lectures only. It has to have an immersive experience. Well, in these challenging times, offline face-to-face education cannot happen, but how can online become more immersive with the use of augmented reality, virtual reality? That's one thing which I don't see anybody looking at. So there are lots of these niches which are being overlooked because of the herd mentality of, going behind what is already existing. Now, in this particular application, also like a nurse has to be given an environment around an operation theater, around the patient's bed. And that can be done with AR, VR. Plus, a nurse has to be able to handle physical bodies. That's where maybe a combination of AR, VR and some 3D printing kind of startups could actually come together, create platforms. And 6 million is not a niche. From a management school perspective, I call it a niche, but it's a huge market there. All three of you, what you're saying is there are these opportunities which are there to be exploited. So go a little deeper into what already that you see. 5 minutes before we started this discussion, Dr. Ashwin was talking about how startups immediately jump into the market with some solution that they already have, and they don't spend time really understanding what the user is looking at. Customer discovery, typically what it is called. So Dr. Ashwin, can you elaborate a little of how rigorously at IIT Madras you spend time trying to inculcate that into the minds of the young startups?
Absolutely, Kaustav. And just before I start, I just wanted to add on to your points that you were making on potential, medical education, etc. There's a story recently, I don't know if it came in the papers up north. There's this Egyptian boy who had a very severe issue. I can't remember medically what that was. So that even during this COVID period, he had to come to India to get operated on. And the doctor also was very nervous in terms of operating, because apparently it was one of those things where if there was slight wrong incision, then the kid dies. So actually, one of my colleagues at IIT Madras who works on AR, VR in the biomedical field actually was able to build a simulation. The doctor came and sort of virtually did the operation, understood what to do, went in, and then finally did the operation. There's a news article later, the operation was successful, the boy went back. But I think it's a classic case of what you're saying, where AR, VR, etc. can really be used to help us teach things, not necessarily in a face-to-face environment, but in an immersive environment nonetheless. And even if you want, for instance, in medical devices, you have this notion of haptics. You need some, the nurse has to feel the pressure, etc. These are simple devices that possibly can be manufactured and still be mailed around, so that people can buy them, put them in their homes and still take these. So absolutely agree with you that you need to think creatively. But the challenge in all of these is these are deep tech in some sense, which means it's not a question of some smart person with an idea doing it. You actually need somebody with either biomedical knowledge, engineering knowledge, who understands some of this, able to program well, etc. So I think one of the things I would sort of suggest is that also people get deep into a particular area. You're either a finance expert or a technology expert, rather than being the sort of jack of all trades for this to happen. Specifically to your question, we at IIT sometimes have a little bit of the other problem, where we have these deep tech experts. They understand the technology, but they think that whatever they come up with is the next best thing to sliced bread, and immediately the world will fall at their feet and they will have millions of orders by the end of the week. Right? And so they do not even see why they should talk to customers, why they should have a business plan, why is financing important, because they're sure that what they have invented, which from an academic perspective is probably highly innovative, is right up there in terms of the world's best innovation. Then they obviously are in for a rude shock. Within a month, 2 months, they go in. It turns out that a lot of people don't necessarily want what they have is excellent, it's innovative, etc. It just doesn't satisfy anybody's need, right? And so what we're trying to do is put the horse before the cart, so to say, and sort of say, look, before you get too deep, why don't you go and talk to a few customers? And we have this program that is run by a center called the Gopal Krishnan Deshpande Center for Innovation, called the Incubate program, which essentially does this as customer discovery. And roughly, in a nutshell, in 7 weeks, they are expected to speak to no less than 100 potential customers. That's your target, 100 people in 7 weeks, right? Which means literally you're on the phone all day. What these guys find is, or all our startups find, is the first 10 to 15 people that they talk to, who they think are their obvious customers, turn out not to be their customers at all, right? Either the guy doesn't need it, can't afford it, etc., etc. And it's only towards the end that they start discovering a brand of customer that they never thought existed, right? They never thought that these guys are our customers. So I think, and also the process of how do you do customer discovery, because very often IIT student walks in and say, isn't this technology good? Other person's often intimidated and says, hey, yeah, of course it's good. And this guy then takes it as a signal that yes, he's going to buy my technology, right? Which is absolutely not the conversation that has happened. So we go through a systematic process where it's almost an ethnographic process, try to understand what the other person's doing, what their needs are, how does what you do fit their needs, will they be able to pay, all of those kinds of things. So to me, both are important, right? You need to be technologically, or you need to be savvy in some domain, whether it's finance, technology, really an expert. But secondly, just because you're an expert doesn't mean what you come up with is super innovative, right? And that's where this customer discovery process is important. And I cannot emphasize how important it is to do it as early as possible.
Right.
Right. Even if you don't really have a full-fledged product, it's okay to go and talk to a few customers, potential customers, right? So that's sort of my view on that.
Kind of to summarize in one sentence, what Dr. Ashwin said is user first, technology later. That's a mantra that all of us need to follow. Uday, Chaya, your views on the same. Some examples of people make that mistake and maybe changing later. Can you cite some examples?
So that is what I was coming to when I said the assured formula, which is being prescribed by Dr. Mashelkar. I mean, it sounds like a tall order. It has to be affordable, it has to be sustainable, it has to be scalable, it has to be unique, then it has to be rapid. Incidentally, Dr. Mashelkar has added resilient to rapid now. He says this R, because of COVID now, also has to be resilient in addition to rapid. And then it has to be also excellence. It should also have excellence in it. It should also be distinguished. Now, what is Assured Matrix doing essentially is looking at the value proposition for the customer. Unless there is value for customer is not going to pay. What typically happens is that we get so excited by our ideas and we are so convinced, therefore, that it has got a lot of value in it that we don't really, pause, step back and see whether the person who is expected to spend money on it finds value in it or not. Because the perception of value has to come from the user.
Absolutely.
And therefore, understanding of value also has to come from the point of view of the user. And then if we try to incorporate those additional features or those, or maybe remove some of the features which are unnecessarily making it costly. So therefore, we have some kind of, very strategic cost leadership, which is also around that thinking, and also a good positioning to make sure that customers' value expectations are met. And then you are able to differentiate it from the competitors is when your product is going to succeed. And that is why I gave a very simple example of Parle-G, because I'm sure all those people who are here, who are attending the webinar, nobody will say that I don't know how Parle-G is. Everybody has eaten Parle-G. And how come it is that such a simple product has survived COVID? And they made highest sale ever since their inception in last 80 years during COVID period. And all those bigwigs, are complaining that, we have lost our market share. So what needs to be looked at is actually the value proposition. And therefore, value creation is what has to be the objective of an entrepreneur, while putting his idea into the shape. Now, one slightly different take that I will take from what he took for IIT students, I will talk about the management students. The IIT students, of course, they are technologically very, very superior, and therefore, of course, they are thinking that it's a fantastic product and it's a great innovation, it's a great leap of innovation as far as the technology is concerned. But I think as a management student, you are somewhere taught that the innovation has to be frugal as well. Just a fantastic technical innovation is not good enough. It has to be frugal if it has to be commercialized. And therefore, management students need to learn that all the time jugaad is not going to work. Bootstrapping is not about jugaad. They love to use this word jugaad and they have really glamorized this word. But let me tell you, what we say, swarg paane ke liye khud marna hi padta hai. So you die and you go, to the pearly gates, and if you find those gates are closed and then do some jugaad to get those doors open, the jugaad will work. But jugaad will not take you to the pearly gates. So bootstrapping is extremely, extremely important because everyone is sensitive about money and everybody understands. People have intuitive understanding of when to spend money and when not to spend money. So we cannot really take our customer for granted. However, saying so, people are still willing to pay more. People have money to pay more if it fulfills their individualized needs, is what I feel. And therefore, we are looking at today that, you talked about the financial services and you talked about these, pharmaceutical industry and all, which actually are about our basic living. But then people are also willing to pay for OTT platforms and online gaming. And, people are now looking at the managed office spaces also. So people want to invest. They do want to invest. There has to be a value, whether it is tangible, whether it is intangible, but it has to be from the customer's perspective, from the buyer's perspective. And if you are able to manage your technological wizardry with the financial prudence, I think you end up creating an innovation which will be ready for commercialization and it will always have takers in the markets.
So all in all, basically startups or any business person, please enhance your empathy quotient. How well can you empathize with your customer is the message that is coming through. Uday, your views?
Yeah, so I will mainly talk from incubation perspective whenever any startup comes in, and I always share this with everyone within the ecosystem as well. Most of the startups, when you start, is on assumptions. So 80% what you see are assumptions. How quickly they can convert those assumptions into reality and show that actual sort of numbers and data, rather than doing it through Google or through PPT or Excel sheets. I think that's where we really need to come out of that particular. So in one of the ways at our Atal Incubation Center, we have made it a practice that whoever comes in and first shows the PPT, we tell them we don't want to see the PPT. We want to see exactly what is the real data or actual traction that you have seen on ground. I think that's what the customer discovery is all about, that you are there on the field. You are there maybe now with COVID, not on the field, but at least interacting through online platforms as well and getting to know exactly what are their pain points. And I believe that is very important. And one of the things what you really talked about niche, I believe that in this times, people are ready to pay as well. If at all, if it's more of safety, yes, they would pay a premium. And that is where I think a lot of good entrepreneurs will not just survive, but thrive in this particular condition. And we are seeing a couple of, so there are, we talked about, rather, Dr. Kaustubh, we talked about low-cost ventilator, one of the company based in Bangalore.
Dynamic, yeah.
Exactly. And that is where I think they've been doing it for years, but this is the situation. And they are doing it with social impact as well. I believe that's very important, which is around sustainability. And whether you want to do it to make money, I mean, every entrepreneur wants to make money, that's fine. But at the same point of time, if you don't have the sustainable plan and more of advisors around you who would give you that kind of a mentoring and path across, I think it's going to be very difficult for young entrepreneurs to survive. And that is what the key takeaway that I see, that maybe people should pick it up and then have more of real scenarios in their PPTs and Excel sheets rather than having it just as numbers, because it's not just getting funding. Because one of the things which is most important now is the funding through customers, not funding through angels or investors.
Yeah. So basically, what from whatever three of you have mentioned, I think startups, either at scale stage or at seed stage, whatever stage they are at, please look at the user journeys of your customers. What these user journeys were before February are not going to be in July and August. Please take time to understand the changed user journeys of people and see what opportunities are coming out from there. For example, very simple, suppose a person a family has 100 rupees to spend. It used to spend maybe 50 rupees on essentials, 25 rupees on slightly less essentials, and maybe 25% on entertainment, or 20% on entertainment and 5% in savings or whatever. Now, please examine where your venture falls in, whether it falls in that essential investment of a family, whether it falls in that discretionary spend of the family, or whether it falls in a non-essential kind of a space. And look at, kind of try to tweak your offerings so that they may come from the non-essential spend to probably essential spend, is something that startups or ventures need to look at. That's how I would kind of summarize our discussion so far. Another point I'm looking at is a lot of people are losing jobs, taking pay cuts. So there is a lot of expertise floating around in the market. How can startups take advantage of that? Dr. Ashwin, you touched upon a little bit about when you spoke about collaboration. Chaya and Uday, you also mentioned about collaborating and finding skills to form a team. It can't be done by one person. So today, with this kind of a situation, people having lost their jobs or having taken pay cuts, maybe not happy with their employers, are startups in a position to kind of capture that, latent need to establish oneself from these professionals who have suddenly become jobless or have taken pay cuts? So what is your take on that? How should startups kind of look at their manpower planning or picking up talent, so to say? Anyone?
So ma'am, go ahead.
No, please carry on.
Yeah. No, I was just going to say it's a bit of I view it as a bit of a double-edged sword, in the sense I agree there is talent floating around, but we've also seen through our incubator, and I'm sure everyone else has as well, that the team chemistry becomes important. And sometimes it is difficult to establish that chemistry virtually if you don't really know the person well. And so it's something that I think it's one thing to say, okay, there are people with some time on their hands. Would they like to mentor us? It's also something to say, here's somebody I knew, I've worked with, or their skill set clearly fits. And so, maybe they can come on board part-time, full-time, etc. But it's also something, a place where I would also exercise a little bit of caution and not jump into this thing, oh, there's a number of people and it's all online, so I could even connect with somebody now in the US, which I could not have done earlier. Because you need to build a team that is cohesive and which sort of is the same mental plane, I think, is sort of important. Yeah. So that's sort of my quick thought on that. Although I agree that's something that startups should look at.
Chaya, you were saying something.
I was just saying that's where, the freelance workers come into picture. I know of many people who do have a job from 9 to 5, but because they're saving good 3 to 4 hours and traveling and working from home, they've actually started something, in the end of the day. There are many who have started taking now coaching also. They are investing their time in learning, taking online certifications. But as far as the startups are concerned, I find there is a very big opportunity for freelance workers. Of course, you know, the house sitting, babysitting, cleaning, and those freelancing opportunities have come down, and those people don't have any money because they were freelance workers and they were not in a full-time employment. But the new opportunities are coming. I see people in social media management, in graphic designing, in web development, also making apps and helping people from remote programming, then all customer service, IT management, accounting, personal assistance, writing, editorial, video editing, and also delivery drivers. I have seen that there are new recruitment sites people have opened up for freelancers. So you see, there are so many opportunities. I mean, we can have so many startups coming up in this, and people can start, you know, their own work and they can expand. Going forward, it may not remain 100% digital, but it's not going to become 100% physical either. It will become something like a mix of digital. And whatever is, somebody said earlier, whatever is going to fulfill our need, people are paying premium for that. I have a 91-year-old mother-in-law at home. You know, we have been paying for her caretakers, you know, double the salary because we have no option but to retain those persons 24 hours with us. And one person cannot handle the job more than 12 hours. So we have to still give the person rest. Still, we have to pay 2 times. And both of them, we are paying double the salary. And those who cleaners and all who were earlier coming and doing the job, who cannot come, we have to still pay them the salary. So you see, there are many of these who have lost their jobs, but there are many of these who are being paid as well. Now, these sweepers, for example, who take salaries from us, they have taken up jobs elsewhere. Now, this is an example at, you know, at a very low rung of society. But this kind of a thing I am seeing everywhere today. People are doing their job, people are taking up extra jobs, and yes, with that little flexibility and your ability to do little more, and, you know, also learn little more, so that, you know, the new challenges that you can, that are there around you, you can convert them into opportunities. I find there is a lot of opportunity. And I don't think these freelance people, you know, are ever going to go out of our, you know, our ecosystem. They are always going to remain there. In fact, now it has opened up at a global level. If I want some kind of a legal advice, you know, for my firm, its office in US, I can now access the person. I could do that earlier also, but earlier I didn't do that because I thought I can physically manage that. But today I'm able to do that. People are accessing me from somewhere else. So I think there is a huge connectivity, and with the huge connectivity, of course, there is a huge competition. But if you are focused and if you develop your abilities, I think there are a lot of opportunities.
So, combining what both of you said, Dr. Ashwin touched about the psychological match, the wavelength match between people. You spoke about, so to say, the gig economy and picking up, you know, people who have the expertise but have, and also the time. Now, typically from a startup's perspective, what I feel is the startup is not equipped to handle the legal challenges that come out of these kinds of things, you know. Like, I have some expert who's a damn good coder at Google or Facebook. Now, how do I handle the, you know, the service level agreement, so to say? What is the deliverable? What if this is not delivered, etc.? And at startups, generally people, the young kids, don't look at the service level agreements, so to say. Now, these are some challenges which I see coming. Right. So, Uday, you have a panel at AIC of legal experts, etc. So, how would that kind of, you know, help the startups managing these situations?
No, definitely. So, first question, I think rather what you really spoke about is people having opportunities to work with startups. I would flip it around and say that the people that are with the startups as well may look at outside, right? I mean, that is what another aspect is. This is the right time wherein, in a way, that if they don't align with the startup vision and they mainly talk about kind of what is in it for them if the things are not aligned, then maybe from the startups as well, you would see people moving out. So how do we really manage that particular situation is very important. Of governance and the agreements, what you really spoke about is putting the legal perspective. And I believe that this is the right time to consolidate and look at those particular factors. I would love to cite an example here. So that there is something called as KRA and KPIs, key responsibility areas and key performance indicators. I believe that now we would move from KRAs to KPIs, right from corporate to startups as well. People will look at performance indicators rather than what are your responsibility areas, because of the multitasking that would be required with a shorter team and a very small team that will have to. I mean, that is for sure at times, because a lot of times we have seen that at startups as well, people may put in processes looking at the responsibilities, but now they'll have to really come up with performance indicators and bigger goals. I think that's important from a startup side to retain the talent. And the other aspect is, again, don't look at the other, because that other person who wants to join you may be momentary because of the situation that has been there, whether that particular person really fits into a startup culture or not is very important question that we need to, because otherwise what would happen, you would train them and then they would move out after 6 to 8 months. And that's another major pain for a startup to get new people across. So again, I mean, and again, legal part of it, I think a lot of startups, they miss out. One of the most important aspects is even this is the right time to have the founders agreement. Most of the times we don't see many startups having agreement within the founders. And I believe these are the very important times wherein you really have it out in black and white on legal paper that what's the role responsibility of each of the founders, co-founders, and they are going to be there for long run. And that's where we pull in resources and get experts to really talk about founders agreement and the fundamentals of startups at this point of time.
Yeah, so you made a very important point that roles, responsibilities, and the key performance indicators.
Indicators, you know.
Put some numbers to the responsibilities also. Many times we just say, this is your responsibility, that is my responsibility, but please try to quantify those responsibilities into some numbers. Like, the next 3 months, XYZ person will get X number of customers, will meet Y number of customers, etc. So that you can measure the progress of your startups against these milestones is what I kind of, if I were to summarize what they were saying, that's what I would. Yeah, Chaya, you're raising your hand. Please.
So yeah, so this talk on the key performance indicators, it reminds me of something that I've been teaching for many years now. So key performance indicators are typically linked to operational surplus, operational efficiency, turnover efficiency, cost efficiency, and capital efficiency. So how, when I was talking about value creation from the perspective of the customer, okay, I'm now talking about value creation in terms of financial proof of it. So these key performance indicators, when they are linked to these three things, the turnover, cost, and the capital efficiencies, automatically value creation happens. And when the value creation happens, the funding and everything goes in place, and there is always a financial prudence and financial discipline also. Just wanted to add that.
Yeah, thanks for that.
Yeah.
Now, another thing that we've been witnessing is this reverse migration phenomenon. A lot of workers from urban spaces have gone off to their villages. And now that gives out a lot of opportunities also in that rural space. So what kinds of things you see that young students, startups can capitalize on in that space, which has been created because of this reverse migration, the vacuum created in the city and the surplus created in the rural space. So what kinds of sector spaces, opportunities you think can come up from there? Who wants to take it? Anybody?
So I'll take this, Dr. Kaustubh. It's a very, very important point, because reverse migration, when we say, I mean, there is another aspect to it as well, which is about a lot of people will move back to India as well. from other countries. I believe that that's another trend that I'm seeing, in a way, that people that are abroad wanting to move out and come back to India for the good. There is a possibility around talent on that particular aspect as well. And when we say reverse migration, typically it's around going back to tier 2, tier 3, your hometowns or something of that sort. I believe skill building is going to be very important. Skill building of this specific set of migrants. That's where this is education space would open up a lot of opportunities wherein we can build up their skills and also experiences. One of the things that I would like to add here is we used to talk about B2C, B2B, B2G model. One of the newer phenomena is going to be, which is around D2C, which is direct to consumer. And I believe that's a very important within reverse migration, because a lot of times what's been happening is we started looking at it pre-COVID that rural has got a great potential market and money as well. A lot of corporates are moving into that market. And I believe now with the direct to consumer and then people being able to relate to exactly when they would move back and then they would bring back those experiences and that talent as well. I think UP government has started a couple of programs around that as well, as far as we know. So again, I mean, that is how do you tap the talent? How do you really upskill them? That's important. And then also about the rural business part to it. How do you really kind of cater to the needs of the specific people around that segment is what people will have to really look at. And the other aspect is also about how do we really manage the talent that will come back from abroad. We spoke of phenomena of brain drain as well, right? How do we stop that earlier? I think there's a time when we could really start thinking on implementing those things now. I think that's important.
Yeah.
If I can just add a word or two, and I mentioned this earlier as well, I think we've got to look at two very separate strategies, right? So at the urban centers, you are actually facing labor shortage, and therefore you're looking more at changing your supply chain, innovating more technology, automation, etc. Rural, you're actually now you have something that we've always complained for a long time that we never had, which is people in rural areas to do whatever. Because we keep complaining about the rural to urban migration. So, you know, as an example, people have talked about the whole rural BPO kind of model for a long time now. But again, because of this constant sort of drain of people from rural to urban, I'm not sure that that story has had the kind of has reached the kind of crescendo that it should in a country like India with our demographics and talent, etc. Maybe now is a good time to start revisiting some of those models that perhaps failed because of the migration, to see if they would work. So again, it comes down to you know, entrepreneurs who see, you know, have the vision, you know, see this innovation, but also, you know, sensibly look at, as people were saying, key performance indicators, metrics, customer discovery, etc. There is a systematic process. I mean, when I was talking about this earlier, in the beginning at IIT, when people used to come, again, they used to be highly tech focused. But over a period of time, that's changed now. People understand that there is a process to entrepreneurship. The people who are coming in now are far more mature. So we hope that some of these more mature entrepreneurs will look at these market segments in two different ways and come up with good solutions.
Right. Chaya, I saw you also.
Yeah. That's no. So when someone speaks, you also get some ideas. So.
Right. Yeah.
So while Uday was speaking about it, and he was talking about skill building as one of the most, you know, what I should say, one of the most important opportunities that we have. I see another great opportunity because of this reverse migration is that of healthcare in the rural areas. Because all these people who have now gone back, okay, they are going to be without any salary, without any employment, without any money. Of course, I don't know how much we will be able to add to GDP in urban areas because these hands have gone back now. I have no idea about that. But I think in the rural area, healthcare, education, and skill building. I think these three are the areas where we have a lot of opportunities for startups. Earlier on also, there has been some reverse migration here and there. I mean, we all remember that movie Swadesh, for example. Okay, and if I may say, then Baba Amte, what he did in Chandrapur was actually a great example of social entrepreneurship. You know, how he made that entire barren land, you know, so productive and so good and so useful for everybody. So there are so many such opportunities There are many agri-based startups which are in tier 2 cities as of now also, and these have been set up by none other than IIT, IIM graduates who left the big cities and went to 2-tier cities because they felt that there was proximity to the farmers, there was proximity to the food producing belt. So all the agri-based startups were very well handled from there. Besides, the cost of cost of operation of running a startup was less. There was less competition. So all those advantages were there, and all those advantages are still over there. Only thing, we have a very huge number now at our disposal in terms of these migrant workers. And because of COVID situation, how early they will come back if they want to, that also we do not know. So yes, as of now, I see there is a huge challenge of administration, healthcare, and taking care of their basic needs. So if we can support the government in that, the startups have a lot of opportunities over there.
So coming to, you spoke about government. Uday, a specific question to you, because I know you work closely with the government. So, and a lot of the stimulus which is being pumped into the system and is being pumped into the system. How can, are there specific schemes for startups to take advantage of, whether in the rural space or in the urban space? So some pinpointed tips from you.
So again, I mean, this is something that's evolving. I must say that there are not ready-made solutions or something that would be, but in a way that science, technology, certain specific related to innovations around COVID, government has started pumping in money through different initiatives and different government bodies. So you have Atal Innovation Mission, you have DST, Department of Science and Technology, Department of Biotechnology coming in, Nidhi Prayas through DST, innovation funds, and even corporates are pumping in money. It's not just the government, but again, if you find solutions around, they are coming up with problem statements, and entrepreneurs could make use of those specific grants that are being there. Or challenges, normally what we really call it as. So again, there is a huge scope, but at the same point of time, very important is don't build your solutions looking at those grants or the government support. Again, that's going to take time in a way that, so we have Kavach program through DST at Science IIT Bombay that's been implemented, that has got almost ₹1 crore for startups that are at prototype level. So again, I mean, there are a lot of schemes around at this particular moment. Government is trying its best, and wherein reverse migration, I think most importantly, government is going to play a key role. And that's the reason I said specifically one particular UP government around that. But this is where I believe that it's very important that the startup has to really understand exactly the process that goes along with it. That there are certain protocols, there are certain processes that they need to follow, and they need to prove themselves. And whenever the government gives in, even to the incubators as well, there is a 50-50 commitment from both the parties. It's not just only the government putting in the money. There has to be some commitment coming in from the other party as well. So in that ways, I mean, again, the startups have to be very careful, but very important is with China now, again, I mean, that is what everyone is talking about. Anti-China sort of a sentiment around. I think there is a huge scope, because with Atmanirbhar Bharat and Make in India, we'll have more momentum, and then we'll have to look at more manufacturing and startups coming in from those areas as well, which I believe startups should grab it with both the hands now. I think government is ready in pumping in money around that.
So I was going to touch that point of vocal for local, etc. But before that, I'm going to take the liberty of kind of putting some responsibility onto the CEO of AICRMP. Is that can we kind of make a table where it proves like a guideline to startups for various government schemes? Suppose I am operating in X domain, which grants should I look at? I am operating in ABC domain, which grant should I look at? Because when I'm a 22-year-old, 23-year-old enamored with my own stuff, I just have no understanding of how the government operates, how these grants can be taken advantage of, etc. So can we, from the ecosystem, come up with publish a table, so to say, a matrix, which we can, which will help these startups into exploring what to explore firstly. I mean, because it's very confusing and everybody tells different things. Nobody kind of, I haven't met even one person who has been able to give me a correct picture of this is your startup, go to this department, this cell will help you do this, fill this form. So can we actually, can we do that? I mean, it will take some time, but I think.
So again, I mean, so there are two aspects to it. One is announcing those policies, and the other part is the implementation body around it. I believe that's where most of the times the confusion is. People expect that the department that has announced it will really disburse those funds. That's not the case. There are different steps to it, which startups will have to, and the young innovators will have to realize that. Surely more than happy to be a part of making that particular process, which may take time, but it's the need of the hour, I believe. Yes.
In fact, the way I see it is that, if it could be a one-day module and it could be administered to the CEOs of various incubators across the country.
Maybe we could have all the stakeholders and also do it more like even the implementation body, the real stakeholders from the government coming in and then talking about it. We can definitely look at that.
Yeah. So now coming to this vocal for local, not just Atmanirbhar Bharat, but I think across the globe, there is that sentiment of anti-China coming in, taking root. So what kinds of opportunities come up at the startup level? So that's my question. I'm not talking about big time manufacturing of motorcycles and vehicles and X, Y, Z, etc., but something that a startup can chew. Where do these opportunities do you see coming up with this whole supply chain from China breaking down, etc.? So, your views.
So if I can maybe just weigh in on that quickly. First of all, I'm not sure that a whole lot has changed. And so it isn't as if certain things are going to be sort of suddenly, magically opening up. I think those opportunities have been there for a while because we've been looking at Make in India for quite some time now. One thing that might happen is if companies actually relocate and start looking at India as a potential base in lieu of China, then I think there can be there are opportunities for a number of service providers that can come up around those industries, who might provide either value-added services or might provide localization-related services, etc. So I think that's an opportunity that might present itself in the future. But it's not, if I were an aspiring entrepreneur, it's not the direction that I would be thinking at the moment. I think I would sort of still be looking at, as both Uday and Chaya ma'am were saying, business with good fundamentals. And, at some point, it will, maybe its time will be accelerated by these sort of geopolitical shifts. But ultimately, I think you're still looking at an innovative business with good fundamentals.
Your views, Chaya, Uday?
Yeah, so I don't think anything very magical is going to come out of this. See, let us accept. Let us look at the facts first. Okay, if we look at the facts, out of the top 30 startups of India, 18 startups are as of now being financed 50% or more than that. Okay, by Alibaba, then Tencent Holdings and the SteadView Capital, right? I was looking at a video clip today. These video clips have started coming ever since this, nationalistic sentiment has started building. I am a nationalist too. I too feel, very strongly when I see that video clip that why we are still using anything which is made in China. I should not be using it, but I'm wondering what all can I throw out of my life? What all can I throw out of my? I'm looking at, say, Big Basket, Flipkart, Ola, Paytm, Zomato, Make My Trip, Oyo, Baiju, TikTok, Dream11, Policy Bazaar, Quicker, Edgy, Hike Messenger. Everywhere there is an investment of Chinese. That investment is not going anywhere, and that is okay if it is not going anywhere. The question is that in which industry should I feel that, I will be more successful than Chinese? Look at the toys, the solar equipment, medical equipment, electrical and nuclear machinery, fertilizers, pharmaceutical APIs, organic chemicals. plastic, iron, steel articles, auto components, all are being imported to a huge extent from China. Our trade deficit is more than 50, is almost around 50%. So China is going to be there. Even Google, if they say that, okay, we'll make something in India and Vietnam, they are not going to stop making it in China. They are also going to be very much over there. The truth is that China is very much going to be there. Okay, the question is whether we can look beyond China and now stop being dependent on them for everything. I'm taking a very specific example of these coronavirus kits, which were immediately imported from China. They were giving faulty results and the next order was cancelled. My question is, in such a simple thing, why we couldn't think of doing it on our own? This habit of turning to China because everything is easily available and everything comes to us, which is not happening now. Now they're raising prices and they are also making money out of it. We have to, when we say Atmanirbhar Bharat, we have to think that first priority should be for us to see if we can make it. And to that extent, if we start looking in every corner, there will be an opportunity. Because it's not as if we don't know how to make things. We had an entire textile belt here in Lower Parel. Okay, I remember in 80s when I passed out from UDCT. Okay, I passed out with textile chemistry background. Okay, and when I passed out in 83, Datta Samant was just shot dead, and I realized I'm not going to have any job. I was very lucky to have got into JBIMS, and after that I could change my line. Okay. But the question is, changing your line should not be a solution if you are really thinking of an Atmanirbhar Bharat. We have to ask question, why can't we do it? Now we are moving very aggressively, for example, in electric car segment. But if you are looking at the lithium and lithium batteries, lithium, all the mines in the world are also owned by China, apart from having whatever mines they have. But we can use cobalt. Cobalt can come from Congo. So we can actually, now we have to start looking around the other options. It's just that we, not just we, the whole world has got so used to looking at China. If all of us together start first looking inward and looking elsewhere outward, I'm sure there will be some solutions, but it's a long haul. And before that, we have to make so many changes, land-related reforms, laws-related reforms, labor-related reforms, our migration of labor problem is there, policy-based reforms. But unless all those are done quickly, so the government support has to come, people have to change their habit of looking always at China, and the startups also have to look at what they can therefore do out of it. Unless we change this mindset, this opportunity is not going to materialize is what I'm saying, but there is definitely an opportunity.
Okay. One last question to all of you. 3 skills needed for a startup founder. 3 essential skills needed for a startup founder.
3 each or 1 each?
3 each.
He wants 9 skills.
So I think, perseverance is possibly at the top of my list. Second is, I think leadership is would be my second goal, because you'll have to build a team, and perseverance because you're going to get knocked down 99 times before you actually make it over the hump. So perseverance is important. Leadership is important because essentially you start with nothing. You've got to convince employees to work for you. You've got to convince investors to fund you. You've got to convince customers to buy your product. So that would be second. And the third would be some depth in some domain, right? It could be technical, it could be financial, it could be sales, marketing, whatever it is. I think some depth, so you actually can take decisions, informed decisions on what to do, rather than just sort of using common sense. So those would be perseverance, technically skilled, and leadership would be my 3.
All right.
So yeah, I mean, as Dr. Ashwin rightly said, 3 each, or we may agree on a couple of skills. That is like perseverance. I definitely feel that's important. But 2 criteria normally I always talk about. One is adaptability, which I would put it as a skill as well, in a way that how quickly you can adapt to the situation and then that's where the pivoting also comes in. And most of the times we talk about pivoting. And I believe adaptability is a part to that has to be looked as a skill. And another very important, I believe, is people management. I think people resource management is also very important. Leadership, maybe we can include within that as well. But it's also about overall, in a way, that how do you really manage your people and resources that are available, and how quickly adapt and give the right sort of things to the people around. That's important, because that's where you will build an organization, and organizations are built with people, not with products or services. That's my way of looking at things.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I have the advantage of having heard of 6 best skills, but now I also have a job of thinking of the other 3. So yeah, so I think while I agree with everything that I have heard so far, what I would like to add is learnability, I think, is one skill. You have to be a student lifelong if you want to be an entrepreneur, because your learning will never end. You will learn something, you feel as you think you have mastered it, you will have another challenge coming up to you and you will be required to then master that. And then the crisis like COVID. So learnability, according to me, is number 1 skill, which will give you resilience and which will help you to persevere. That is first thing. Second thing, I feel, is a very strong value system. Because during weak moments, you will always want to take shortcuts. You may always want to not want to be that much black and white. Once in a way, you may feel that a gray approach, is easier to take. So let us do it, but no, I think that is a very strict no, because once you lose trust of people, then, your good people management skills will also not pay. So I think a very strong value system, according to me, is the second requirement that you have. And the third is your ability to motivate yourself. You will not always have someone, who will encourage you. You will not always have some conditions around you which will make you feel you are at the best place. In fact, most of the times when you are being knocked down, you will be wondering, why are you here? But for you to be able to get up, you should be able to motivate yourself. So there has to be self-motivation, there has to be the learnability, and there has to be a very strong value system for you to be sustainably successful, is what I feel.
Great. Okay, fantastic. So perseverance, adaptability, people management, ability to motivate yourself, because as an entrepreneur, you're going to be down quite a few times, how strongly you wake up from that, etc. So we've had a very interesting discussion from these 3 very interesting, insightful views. Shall we take questions from the audience now?
Yes.
Yeah, I think we can. There is a mechanism to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's one question in the chat box.
Okay, chat box. Yeah. One question from Dr. Madhvi Kazi. In case of COVID times, when the economy is down and we look at startups, which do require funds and all of them are not successful, what would your advice be? How wise should one be? I haven't quite got the question. How wise should one be? That means, is she asking, what's the point of the question? I didn't get the exact essence of the question.
I wonder if she's asking if it is wise to start up at all in these times. I wonder if that is what the question is. But so, I mean, if yeah, I mean, with regards to that, I would say, of course, Dr. Kazi can clarify on the chat if that is indeed the question. But if we've interpreted it correctly, but if that is the question, then to me, going back to what Chaya ma'am said right at the beginning, becoming an entrepreneur, I don't think is contingent on the presence or absence of COVID. I think if the bug has bitten you, then you really will find you have no other place to go, right? And you will sort of innovate. So I think it comes down to, if you feel that you have a good idea, you're passionate about it, you feel it will work, then I think it's worth taking the plunge. And as again Chaya ma'am was saying in the beginning, and I completely agree, it's not as if funds have completely dried up. I think there is still money available for good ideas if you can demonstrate that a market exists, that you demonstrate your ability to execute, etc. Of course, it might be a bit more competitive, but that's the challenge that an entrepreneur will face in any case. If you go back 10 years ago or whatever, when entrepreneurship was not the sexy word that it is today, it was equally difficult for people to get a foot into the door to talk to anybody as an entrepreneur. So I think similarly, just like people braved the elements then, I think if the time is right, if there's a good idea, you feel it'll work in the way in which we will live our lives in the future. Go for it is how I would look at it.
I've got a different perspective to add here. And this is very important because rather than saying that is this the right time or is this wise during these challenging times, I would say if you would start it now and if you are able to survive, then obviously any particular condition that would come in later on, I'm sure you would be able to thrive upon and make your entrepreneur journey a success. The reason being this is the most kind of challenging time, and there could be a few other challenging times later on as well. But as rightly said, if at all, if you really believe that the solution that you are really working upon or the problem statement that you have really thought about that can bring in the solution, and you would start your journey as an entrepreneur, I think this is the best time to do it because abhi jitne challenges aayenge, I think more you are able to survive, you would be able to really tackle along the way. And that is what we have seen. The toughest of times, even during 2009-10, the startups that started around that time and that are surviving have thrived upon and have got the funding as well. So I think look at it as an opportunity. That's what I would love to say.
Yeah.
So actually, every time, if something new has hit the market, it's been some kind of a crisis at that time. And it is some kind of a pain that the entrepreneur experienced very badly and realized that this needs solution. I mean, we remember about this startup, Red Bus. Okay, the guy was stuck at Bangalore for so long. He couldn't go to Bangalore. He wanted to go, so he started Red Bus. Okay. Y2K bug for that matter. When Y2K happened, such a huge crisis was looming large, and there were so many startups in the IT industry, they came up at that time. But the crux of the thing is that unless you are very strongly feeling that pain point, unless you are very strongly feeling that there is a need to take care of it and you are determined to do it, don't even get into it. You have to be convinced about it. Unless you are convinced about it, you are not going to make it happen.
True.
But if you're convinced about it, there is no way you cannot make it happen. That's how I feel about it.
Great. Thanks. There is one more, Dilip Ibrahim. How can we build confidence with the startup founders during the COVID situation, as most see the difficulty in survival? Well, I think a lot of it has been answered in this question itself. Just to add there, right now, manage your cash flows if you are at a scaled state. Try to convert your fixed costs, as many fixed costs into variable costs as possible. That way, you should be able to increase your existing funding a little longer, so to say, increase the length of the runway that you have, kind of. Anything else that you would like to add to that particular point?
Just want to again underline what you said, Dr. Kaustubh, about cash being king. And I think, again, both Uday and Chaya ma'am had made that point earlier. So hold on to it as much as you can. I think, see, this is, we've got to sort of go with the attitude of this too shall pass. Right?
Yes.
So, at some point, some normalcy will set back in. Of course, it may not be exactly the way it was prior to March 2020, but, the world will, we have to believe that the world will move on. And the job of the founder, therefore, is to make sure that the boat continues to sail until, the good times come back again in some sense. So, and cash is key there. So hold on to your cash.
So there was this. Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
So sorry, there was some net issue and it just froze. So I thought you stopped talking. So just sorry about that.
And
So,
I just can't conclude quickly, if I may, is that, yeah, and there are lots of things that can be done. I think we were making this point just before the session started, that even if you are in a business where you're unable to do something right away, in terms of selling your product, manufacturing, etc., it's a good time to go and relook at your business plan, talk to a few more customers. I think it's important to keep yourself busy with the philosophy that this too shall pass.
Yes.
Ma'am,
Yeah. Hope and faith, two strong pillars. I mean, yeah, true. Then this is more of an opinion. Crucial Thakkar, specifically about PPE kits. We've been speaking about zero plastic. Has the government made adequate arrangements for disposal of these plastics sustainably or not? Well, I think that's a question not on this forum. We need to address it to the right people in the Environment Ministry. Next point, perfect. Looking beyond China, same, Kushal Thakkar. Do we have the scale? If we have the scale, can there be an aggregator, moderator to collate together? That I feel is an interesting question in the sense that a lot of supply chains have broken because of COVID. So you have idle capacities floating around in the system. There are some people who have lost orders in the supply chain. So I feel, I mean, I'll open it to the panel. I feel that these idle capacities in the various domains can be actually exploited. So can we find synergies across these vendors who have idle capacities is a question that we need to really look at, is my viewpoint when we talk about this effect of COVID on supply chains locally as well as internationally. So is it a good time to, I mean, I think it's a good time to look how we can capitalize on these vendors who are idle right now and actually bring them into your value chain in some way or the other in order to cut costs without compromising on quality. What do you guys think about
I think that's a very, very valuable. It's a very, very valuable input. I would say that since there is an anti-China sentiment all over the world, we don't even have to think of aggregating it at a national level.
Yeah.
We could even think of aggregating it at an international level. I mean, these things have been happening since so long back. I remember when Amway started its operations in India, and we were doing that work for a couple of years, and at that time I read that, the direct marketing model was first time brought by Amway in India. But back in US, Coca-Cola was using the entire supply chain of Amway. Now, Coca-Cola is a huge company in its own, in its own right? Amway was very small, but Amway had a network which it could use in its supply chains effectively, and it used it. Okay, back home here, Oyo, Make My Trip, Uber, every aggregator is actually born out of putting idle capacities to use. Actually, if you can look at the way these railway compartments have been converted into COVID yards, or Mumbai municipality has converted all these clubs, and everywhere they have created now COVID wards. So yes, there is a lot around available. Just like money, there are other things, so many resources available. They're just lying around here and there unused. And yes, if we can begin some kind of a movement, so to say, because we are talking about national, international level. But if we can take on something like this, begin with one sector, start aggregating, I think there is a lot that we can do. So I really, really thought that this suggestion of yours, Kaustubh, was very, very valuable. It's a long journey, but I think it's a very valuable suggestion.
Another point, I mean, I'm taking the other side now, because now over the last, say, 40 years, I mean, everybody, all of us have been seeing that efficiencies in the supply chains have improved, right? Everybody is operating, almost everybody is operating in the just-in-time mode, JIT mode. You know, everything has been working like a well-oiled machine. And it has suddenly come to a stop in the last 4 months or so. And I see across the supply chain, certain vendors saying, oh, we should have had some buffer stock. We would have been able to kind of, continue our operations, being ready for the open post-lockdown scenario. Now, just in time on one side is a fantastic efficiency tool, but at such times, everybody is wishing for some buffer stocks. Now, the way these pandemics have been kind of coming at us over the last 20 years, started with SARS, then came MERS, then came Ebola, and then came Nipah, and all those kinds of things. And this has been the biggest one. So going forward, I feel these kinds of pandemics, the frequency of these pandemics, or rather the time period between these pandemics is reducing. And do you think that supply chains would want to have buffer stocks to counter these kinds of breakdowns in the future? I'm feeling it might. What are your feeling? And the opportunities that come out from that, slight spike in production coming in the next 1 year to 1.5 years is something that I'm envisaging. Do you agree with that kind of stuff?
I think it's certainly possible in the short to medium term, because people will still have fresh memories of how they suffered during COVID. But beyond that, it's anybody's guess. For instance, I told you a few years ago in Chennai we had floods. There was lots of, and then we had a drought a year ago, lots of talk on water conservation, etc. But now that sort of talk has died down a little bit. So I think it'll come down to the unit economics of everyone's business. Can you afford to keep extra stock or not? And that may or may not always be necessary. There may, one could think about a regulatory angle to this, where you put in regulations in place that ensure that certain amount of stock is carried, which is probably why we are still able to survive on grain that is now freely available. So I don't really think, I think an entrepreneur will do what's best for their business as far as they can see. I mean, they are risk takers, etc. I doubt that people will build buffers for the sake of building buffers if it doesn't work with regards to the unit economics of their business beyond a short period, where today now we are all mentally scarred with COVID. We will certainly adapt to that in the short term. Yeah. But if we find a vaccine, if this thing goes away at some point, and I'm not saying it will, but if it does, then about a year or so later, I wouldn't be surprised if we are back in sort of this kind of situation.
Yeah, so maybe a year to year and a half, this spike might stay. And that also gives some opportunities for anybody in the manufacturing space right now. So start looking at it, or even in the warehousing space, because commercial properties as they exist today are dying, because people may not go back to offices possibly. Yeah. A lot of things moving to work from home, etc. So commercial spaces, yes. But if anybody is in the commercial space, real estate kind of a thing, will start looking at converting it at least temporarily into a warehousing space, maybe where these kinds of buffer stocks might be. I mean, I'm just shooting in the dark, but possibly. All right. So, yeah, you want to make...
Should I add something to this? It was again a very interesting point, See, all these management models, frameworks, and tools, they evolve the way industry evolves.
Absolutely.
Okay? So in the beginning, when we just had the manufacturing industry everywhere, not much of services were available. In fact, we had only trading account. We didn't even have profit and loss account in our financial statements, In those days, there was no JIT. There was no JIT in those days. The reason was what? The reason was demand was more than supply. So there was no need for anybody to think about JIT. Now over the decades and centuries, then what happened? The manufacturing started growing in terms of the size. Okay, and when the competition became so stiff that you have to be able to offer the customer a price which is cutting edge, otherwise it's going to throw you out of the market. That is when all these models of just in time and all started coming. It started coming from the Japanese management, right? The Kaizen, just in time, all these are coming from Japan. The reason is that Japanese after Second World War had to think of how to invade the world market, and that their only strategy was low cost for good quality, and therefore just in time and everything was it. Now just the other day, I am going to refer to it again because he said it when I was talking to Dr. Mashalkar again. He said, Chaya, just in time is going to be replaced by just in case. So now, which is what you were saying, that everybody is thinking, why not keep some more, some more buffer at home? Why not do that? The thing is that why we are thinking like that is because we are back to basics. We are back to basics. It is the same phase, the basic phase when the manufacturing began, when people thought that we better keep some stock so that we can keep manufacturing. There is so much demand in the market, from where we'll fulfill. Things are not available. Our supply chains are not so developed. Today, our supply chains are developed, but they're disrupted. So we are today in a very similar situation. And the just-in-time actually is from the point of view of the planet, Kaustubh. This is the reason why I wanted to speak over here, because you never touched upon this point, but it's long time back that we have crossed the just-in-time line for the planet. If we continue doing this, as you said, the pandemics are going to come faster and the frequency is going to increase, and we are going to have crisis at much shorter interval, and we can keep any amount of buffer stock, but we'll still be wiped out. Let me tell you that. So actually this just in time now refers to the environment and planet. Unless we take charge of it, go for the decarbonization, go for making sure that we don't damage the planet anymore. Stop taking, pride in saying my address is back by reclamation. I have, reclaimed my place from the sea. This is horrible. This is why we are being punished. And this is what we need to remember. And I think this is another thing we need to teach all these startups. That any startup which is going to exploit the planet further is not going to be sustainable, and surely it will not be scaled.
True. Let's end on a positive note. Some weeks back, I read that.
Dr. Kaustubh, I would love to. So two things, it comes in as an additional responsibility for incubators as well, is to add business continuity and risk mitigation as well whenever we ask startups for their plans, is to cover this particular aspect. And I think we can end it with a very interesting question that's there in the chat box. Maybe you could
go ahead.
That's from Chetan Singhania. Take that, and sure.
You go ahead, you take it.
So it asks idea or cause. What should be the priority of an entrepreneur? As my idea for the cause might fail, what to do in that case? This is a very interesting question. I believe a lot of budding entrepreneurs would have this, whether that's your startup journey should start with kind of an idea as a kind of a basis to it, or a cause. And this is what I think maybe would love to listen from everyone, including you, Kaustubh sir.
Yeah, who wants to take it?
Idea or cause? When a startup journey as an entrepreneur you start, Dr. Ashwin.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would fall on the cause side of that spectrum, because you start off with an idea, but very often you find that your idea doesn't work, it's wrong, it's you discover different customers, etc. So this we have this fashionable term called pivoting. So I would say if you're wedded to the idea, that you might be in trouble. But if you are wedded to the cause, then you'd be able to pivot your idea accordingly.
Yeah. I would also go with the cause, because that cause is what drives you. Idea will come, go, market will decide whether it's successful or not. But if you are very strong, convinced about the cause, I think you will be at it at all times.
So yes, I like the idea of a cause. And if the cause is supported by an idea, that idea will always succeed no matter what.
Yeah. Great. So I was just saying that we'll end on a positive note. Some days back, I read that we were at 1972 levels of CO2 emission during the lockdown. So let's keep that as a benchmark in saving the planet as well and thinking of ideas around that cause. Thank you very much for an interesting and enlightening discussion.
Thank you, Uday, for inviting. Thank you, Kaustubh, to moderate the panel. Okay, we really enjoyed. Thank you, Ashwin. It was nice to know you.
Same here. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Uday, Dr. Kaustubh. I don't know how much your audience enjoyed it, but I enjoyed it very much.
I want to also thank Uday's staff.
Yes.
Ital, Pallavi, and everyone else. Yeah. Thank you so much for enabling it.
Yes.
Thank you everyone. Thank you. Thank you. I would like to formally thank all the panelists and Uday sir also for this wonderful engaging sessions and for your insights. For the audience who doesn't know, Kaustubh sir has recently authored a book called It's Logical. It is available at Sage Publications website. This particular panel discussion was part of the foundation program for budding entrepreneurs organized by AIC RMP in collaboration with Outimagine as a knowledge partner. And I think I would like to request Uday sir to talk more about it. And before that, I would also like to thank EdFly team for helping us in managing this whole thing and broadcasting it on YouTube. Thank you. Uday sir, please.
Thank you so much, Pallavi. So EdFly is part of our first cohort. That's our incubator. So it's a proud moment for us, having someone powering this entire thing and making this happen. Thank you so much. Thanks a lot, AIM, Atal Innovation Mission, Niti Aayog. And to conclude, it's just that we have a couple of participants, foundation program participants. So maybe I would like to call a couple of them and then maybe share their experience. And then at the end, I would like to go through the journey of AIC RMP and what are the plans that we have in future. So maybe in next 15 minutes, we'll just kind of move on to these things. And by 3:45, I believe we should be able to wrap up. So may I request maybe Shraddha, if you could just share your experience around foundation program and about your idea as well, what you intend to do. And one of the things we didn't cover was cybersecurity. I believe that's a very interesting space post-COVID, wherein we talked about sector, and I believe that is the idea that you have around, I believe. So maybe, Shraddha, all yours.
Hello, everyone. Hello, Chaya ma'am. Hello, Kaustubh sir, Uday sir, and Ashwin sir. It was a great session, and I have been a part of this entire program from like 6th of June started, and today is the last day. And we have a lot of learnings in this session, and there were like a lot of great speakers which we interacted with whom. And my idea, like I'm from a corporate background and I'm from technical background. My idea is to start cybersecurity consulting service of my own. I'm not looking for a product in near future, like very soon, but maybe after 2-3 years. And what I liked in this entire this 4-week session program was, like, I'm from a corporate background. I belong to a service class family. My mom and dad both are government jobs. But starting the own company is like a challenge for me. But listening to all this conversation gave me a boost up, a confidence that even I can do it, because I don't have a business background and a business family and all that. That mindset is required first. So my purpose of joining this entire program was to have that first entrepreneurship mindset, because leadership skills, all these skills come like gradually. It's like few of the skills are inculcated already within me. I know I can take initiative and all that, but then to polish those skills, that comes by practice. But first of all, to start with the mindset, that mindset was missing in me. So that this platform gave me a confidence that even I can do it. Maybe I'll start with small steps, not like I'm thinking of very high and like, but then within these last 4 weeks, I've like put up my name as InfoSec Engine. It will be a consulting service for the maybe SME, not for the I'm not aiming high. Like, I'll start with small companies, and I am discussing with them to offer them consulting service to make their cyber network devices, network security secure in this like digital era. And after COVID, it's like everywhere, it's like data security, cyber security, and data breaches are happening. But during these last 4 weeks, I have like joined have discussed with few college, and maybe the students who are like doing engineering students, they are very passionate about technical and hacking and ethical hacking and all that. So I have had a chance to represent myself as a team with one of the universities, and I have like, after gaining the confidence maybe, so I've had a webinar session with them last 2 weeks before, and it was a great response which I received from the students. So one of the service which I'll offer is like training and awareness. So that is much needed in cybersecurity, because we people are also vulnerable to cyber attacks. So if we are not aware of like in whether we are having the Zoom call and what precautionary and security measures we should take. So it's like human error also is there in cybersecurity, and it plays an important role. So I had a webinar session, and the response was very nice. Maybe I'll go and try and give it a chance to another universities also. And I'm getting calls from that university to set up their maybe to introduce a cybersecurity subject for first year students, and it will be a like great opportunity for me also. And I really want to thank AICRMP because it was a first chance for me also. Now I'm like net surfing of like more such things, because I used to surf like jobs and all that. Now being an entrepreneur, I feel myself a little confident, and I'll be in touch with all of the speakers and all. I've connected to him on LinkedIn, and it's a like great opportunity for all of us. Thank you so much. Thank you. And it was a great session today to listen to all of you, to have like your experiences, and we'll try to inculcate those experiences in our lives also. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Akash Hazare, something you would like to share?
Yes. Hi. Hi. This is Akash Hazare. And yeah, I mean, it was a very great session. We got to know a lot of insight and where we can focus maybe for our ideas in this post-COVID session. And so thank you all panelists. And during this month-long program, we got to know the discrete step which we should be using as an entrepreneur to discretize the idea and moving forward into the business. So it was a very great session, and thank you AICRMP for organizing it.
Yeah, thank you so much. Anyone else? One more, I mean, if anyone wants to volunteer and then share, otherwise we'll move on to the next. Please switch on your camera and mic, you can talk. Pallavi, anyone else would like to?
No, sir, I think we should continue.
Yeah.
Okay. So just last couple of interesting sort of insights would love to give to everyone. The startup journey for our incubator as well, which has been so exciting. For us is something that I would like to share it through a small presentation that I have. Yeah. I hope you can see the screen.
Yes.
Yeah. So this is an initiative supported by Government of India, Atal Innovation Mission, Niti Aayog, and Rambhav Malgi Prabodhini, which is a parent institution. So as Kaustubh sir also did discuss about the government interventions and all, I think this is very important that our parent institution, which is like set up in 1982, almost 38 years, it nurtures, imparts training, and builds capacity of elected representatives, social workers, as well as people running institutions, organizations, and startups. Got the status of consultative status from United Nations in the year 2006. So that's Rambhav Malgi Prabodhini. This is just a kind of, I mean, we would have loved to do this through a residential sort of a boot camp or a program. So wanted to share this post-COVID. I believe once the situation normalizes, love to host each and every one. I believe there are more than 1,000 viewers on YouTube as well. It's a personal request side to visit part of this facility, which is in the remote part of Mumbai, SL World Road, pretty much kind of away from the hustle and bustle of Mumbai city. And it's a wonderful infrastructure and facilities that we have. These are the governing board members that we have. Mr. Ravindra Sathe, who is the Director General, RMP, and Director at AIC RMP, Mangal Prabhat Lodha, Jai Brug, Kirit Bansali, sir, and Dr. Syed Zafar Islam. Mr. Ravi Pokarna is the Chief Advisor. This is a journey I would love each and everyone. This is what we have now in last 16 months. So December 2018, I joined and we started our operations day 0, March 2019. And this is where the journey has been with 19 startups that we have incubated all across India, 4,000 plus youth inspired, covering almost 15 plus cities and districts, and doing numerous training programs and workshops. This is one of the initiatives which, through which we are having this panel discussion, and we are going to open this up next batch in July. We'll come back with exact dates on that. This is a foundation program for budding entrepreneurs. This is what we have in the pipeline. Batch 2 we will start in mid-July. Faculty development program for entrepreneurship, because we believe in capacity building as well of the ecosystem. Innovation IP related certification course. We would launch a program with a corporate on startup fundamentals. And we are launching our second cohort of startups. So in our first cohort, we have 20 startups. In the second cohort, we expect to start with 10 to 12 startups that we would start supporting for a 2-year incubation program that we have at AIC RMP. Very important, these are our startups. Why are, I think we had a question in whether that's idea or cause. For us, the cause is startups, why we are there. So this is where our 20 startups, 19 startups, plus 1 pre-incubatee. So Vasundhara Geo, I already talked about initially at the start of the panel discussion. Shekru is a mobile app for agriculture, mainly farmers. Fruits is aggregation of hydroponics. Intech Harness, based in Pune, is water pumps. Kisan Sathi is market linkage for FPOs. Education tech based, we have TGC, that is the gamification company. Immerse is virtual internship. Omnicurious is online modules for doctors. Panthrex is into facilities or electronic medium through which they are setting up classrooms and all. EdFly, which is a part of our today's panel discussion organizing this. Redify is into e-library, and Govardhan, that's into again e-learning space. This is what we really work for as social impact startups. Colorwale, Java Tourism, that's on reverse migration. Rural Caravan, that's working with SHGs. Self-help groups. Kurakari, that's Kolhapuri Chappal. Saniko is into bamboo. Mainly, they have come up with a very interesting faucets, bathroom accessories through bamboo. They are into patenting kind of a thing. Ennoble is working with rural schools on school beautification and have bags, affordable bags for the school kids at rural areas. EcoBio is agriculture waste. They have come up with straws and a lot of solutions, innovations around that. And Team Prayas is a part of Smart India Hackathon. So this is what I think Kaustubh sir really wanted to throw light on, is different challenges. Atal Innovation Mission has got a Atal New India Challenge. DST Nidhi Prayas, which I talked about, UNDP and corporate innovation. These are different grants or schemes that you should really look out for if you are a budding entrepreneur and wanting some grants to set up your business at the beginning. So we have a newsletter, Anta Prerna. Go to our website. We are there on social media, and it's wonderful. I think this is an excellent opportunity for us to really talk about our future plan and also about our journey to everyone out here. So once again, thank you to AIM, Niti Aayog, AIC RMP team members, EdFly, our startup incubatees, our panel members today. They have been a part of our ecosystem, right from Dr. Kaustubh to Chaya ma'am, and wonderful to have Dr. Ashwin as well from IIT Madras, whom we work closely with. So thank you so much. I think with that, we conclude. Pallavi, anything that you would like to highlight if you have missed out? Again, I mean, as I say, this is a journey and these are tough times. But as an entrepreneur, we have to be resilient, and we have to really take this up journey in the right spirit and ensure that we create more jobs rather than being a job seeker. That's what I've always believed in. So thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you for joining.
Thank you, Uday, once again.
Thank you.
Okay, Ashwin.
Thank you. Thank you, man.
See you
Thank you,
sometime.
everyone.
See you
Yes.
sometime. Yeah.
Thank
Okay,
you,
Kaustubh,
Thank you,
bye.
Kaustubh.
Bye, bye, bye.
Bye, Kaustubh.
Nice
Thank you,
Thanks to the
everyone.
entire team. Yeah.
Okay, have a nice day.
Yeah. Thank you.